Mr. Mayor. Got it.
Good morning. There we go. Good morning to all of you, and welcome to this amazing time. We are living in amazing times, difficult times, challenging times. Times like, I've been around a long time and never seen anything like it, and I'm sure you haven't. But here we are, 4 years from the day I met Paul Chapman, and he came to Fort Smith and said, at that time I was a state representative, he said, I've got a great idea. We're talking about restoring hope to families and children, restoring hope to communities. And we want to start in Fort Smith. We want Fort Smith to be a part of that pilot. And here we are today to celebrate one of the best programs that we've ever come up with to encompass families, children, braided into the justice system, and all the services that would make a family whole if they're willing to do their part. And I want to thank all of you. I'm excited about their partnership with United Way of Fort Smith. Eddie, again, congratulations on all the great work you do for Fort Smith. I take a lot of pride in bragging about my United Way and the team that they have over there. And so with that said, I'd like to welcome all of you to Fort Smith. Enjoy your stay and look around. Fort Smith is an amazing place. In these tumultuous times, there's been riots all over the country and around the world. But I'd like to say about Fort Smith, we've had our protests, 5 or 6 of them. And never once has our police department had to put on riot gear. Never once have they had to tell somebody to back up. Never once have they had to release a smoke bomb. They show up. And the citizens here, the young people here, they were angry. I was angry with them. But they did things the right way. When they wanted to protest, they called the police department. How do we get a permit? What should we do? Our police department worked with them and participated in those protests with them. And when they ended, we made sure they had snow cones and water. And we went on our way. And so we're very excited about what we're doing in Fort Smith, how we embrace one another in this river valley, and restore hope in the 100 families is another tool and another mechanism that we're very proud of. And again, I can't thank Paul enough for letting me in at the very beginning to share his vision. And I know I was with the governor yesterday. He's very proud of what you do. It's going to make a difference. It's already. I know you have a time frame, but if we can get families in it, in this 100 Families program, regardless of how long they stay, if they stay 2 months to completion, they're going to gain some knowledge and benefits that will help them and their families for a long, long time. And we're excited that you're here. If you need anything, call the mayor's office, and I'll try to accommodate you. Again, welcome to Fort Smith, and thanks again, Paul, for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 100 Families program, the reentry programs that we have, the alternative sentencing programs, they wouldn't happen without the mayor and without the group that's assembled here and many online. I'm very grateful and proud to be able to work with you all, to do something that is very, very rare. What has happened here in the Fort Smith area, many aspire to, but very few ever are able to achieve the outcomes that's happened here. And so, as the mayor said a number of years ago, we started our work in Fort Smith, and we wanted to have this conference today as a marker of a milestone, a celebration of what has been done, and then tell you about what is fixing to, from my hometown, happen over the coming years. And I am filled with hope to be working with you and to have come up with a model that was grassroots in its solution. So 2 years ago, to set some context when the 100 Families program started, 2 years ago, in Sebastian County in the Fort Smith metro area, opioids were rampant. In fact, in 2015, you saw opioids on the overdosed heat map first popped up here in the Fort Smith area as it entered Arkansas. We had 1 in 34 children in Sebastian County were in foster care. That was the highest by far in Arkansas, and I would put it at the top of the national list. We had a very high incarceration rate, especially amongst females. And according to the Gallup poll, the Fort Smith metro area, in a subjective poll of residents, residents felt least hopeful about the future. And so, imagining better was not enough. Many communities imagined better, and this one did. But this community rallied together to actually do better. And so the problem was not are there resources here, but actually how do you coordinate all the different organizational resources to help one family and communicate all back and forth along what we think of as a continuum of care or a journey from crisis to career. And there was a quote in 2017 that I wrote in my day planner. It's by Abraham Lincoln, and I think it's appropriate, maybe even more appropriate today than it was then, but it inspired me. It was, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew, and we must act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country." And so 40 organizations formed an alliance, the 100 Family Alliance, to help families in crisis move to stability and then all the way out into a career so that they might not fall back into crisis. And I'd like to introduce Karin Phillips, who's been the 100 Families Director these years. And she's going to share with you what over 40 organizations with this pledge have done over the last year. Karin?
Good morning. Through this community, through their commitment to the 100 Families Initiative, has served the most vulnerable families in Fort Smith over the past year. I think we can all agree that strong, stable families are worth fighting for. With only one Restore Hope employee in Sebastian County, this community is stepped up and did something never before. You did it out of pure grit, something that Fort Smith is known for. There weren't a lot of additional resources, but each of you, the partners that signed the declaration, worked hard to support the mission of the 100 Families Initiative. They collaborated in a way that holistically serves the most vulnerable and in a very coordinated way. Organizations like STEPS Family Resource Center and Community Rescue Mission and Hamilton House took on the daunting task of being the primary point of contact for case management services to these families. And alongside Restore Hope, these organizations served 315 families holistically with 759 children. I just wanted to show you a few stats on those 315 families, because I think when you see the desperation of where they were, then you can celebrate all the more how far they've come. Almost half of the children in those families were had children in foster care. 76% of the families had income less than $12,000 a year. Almost 100% of every family we served was under the poverty level. We're truly meeting and seeing the most vulnerable in our community. 1 out of every 4 had a legal crisis. If they got pulled over, they probably had a warrant for their arrest. 57% had been victims of domestic violence at one point in their life. But because of these partners in the community, we were able to have outstanding results in spite of this disparagingly difficult stances that these clients find themselves in. Not just the case management partners, but other partners stepped up to provide the services their organization is best at. They provided it in a collaborative way to help remove roadblocks for our clients. We had strong stability partners in the areas of recovery, education, transportation, housing, food, employment. The Guidance Center and Harbor House provided recovery services, and Guidance Center provided counseling. Antioch and the Food Bank provided food assistance. The Fort Smith Housing Authority and ADFA partnered with us to have specific vouchers for housing for these families. The Arkansas Family Alliance supported our families with furniture when they moved into a new home. And our education partners like Adult Ed, the Literacy Council, and University of Arkansas Fort Smith stepped up and brought in programs that will help them move from stability to career. Not just them, we also had a plethora of government agencies that walked alongside us, which is not always the case, but in this case, we had collaborative partners in these government agencies to help. Children and Family Services was the biggest referral source for our families. That's where they hear about the program. Department of Workforce Services worked alongside us. Chief Baker of the Fort Smith Police Department has been such a big proponent of this program since its beginning, and I have seen his heart for the people. And that is one thing that I see in Fort Smith that makes me so proud, is that the people in leadership care about the people in poverty, and they care about how persons of color and those in poverty are disproportionately affected by all of these different issues that our community faces. I've had the privilege of celebrating with many parents reunited with their children. In fact, we have brought 35 families back together through this program over the past year, just through True Grit. "60 families obtained reliable transportation. 80 families went from homelessness, substandard housing, into safe, affordable housing. And even through COVID, we still have some positive outcomes for employment. We had 17 families that maintained a thriving income in spite of COVID that were at one time in crisis. So that's amazing. And then an additional 35 families that moved from unemployed to stable, full-time employment. I've celebrated with many of these families as they were reunited, and many families that had their cases closed because they no longer needed a protective services plan from the Department of Children and Family Services. On the flip side, I've held mothers' hands. I've cried with them and prayed with them when their rights have been terminated. And it reinvigorates me even more to the length that we must go through to prevent childhood trauma and to keep families together. Recently, we helped a mother as a community. The case manager was Teresa at Steps, and it was a community effort because she had legal issues outside of the state. We found a pro bono attorney, and we had a court resolution specialist, and I and Teresa, and we all pulled our resources, both personally and professionally, in order to help her get those issues resolved. Without resolving those issues, her rights were going to be terminated. And when I think about the cost the pure dollar we are willing to pay for someone else to care for the children of these families, and for someone, for the community to have to take on this huge task of a child that honestly does not have very good statistical outcomes, right? If they were to remain in foster care long term. So we instead were able to save this family from being terminated for such a smaller investment, such a lower amount, but yet isn't it worth it whenever we can help families do what their God-given calling is, and that's for those parents to be able to raise their children in a safe and stable and loving home. And I am very, very excited about what is going to come, but I can't steal the thunder of our other presenters. Thank you.
So thanks, Karin. Even as good as the stats were, over 300 families served, 700 some odd children represented in those families, as good as that is, what we did find was without additional resources, the community, the alliance's capacity to serve families capped out at about 150 families at a time. And so the alliance, the community, could take care of 150 families at a time, but as soon as we hit the 150 mark, we hit a plateau. There weren't any more people that could sit for hours with someone and help them work out what their plan was going to be, how they were going to resolve their case, how are we going to deal with a legal issue in another state. All right, so 150 was the capacity. And so that problem we started trying to solve. And I'd like to introduce Lee Herndon, the president of United Way, Fort Smith area. And Lee has been a supporter and a member of the 100 Family Alliance from the beginning, but he's got some exciting news about where we're going next. Lee?
Good morning. I know this group, when you guys woke up today and your eyes popped open and your feet hit the floor, you were like, I cannot wait to get out here and change people's lives. That's the kind of group we've got here today. That's the type of people we have in Karin and in Paul and those of you assembled here today, and that's how change is made. I know with masks on and social distancing, we have to almost feel like we're doing the golf clap on the 18th hole as we're very quiet, but I know our hearts are exploding today in this room. I know it is such a joyous occasion, and I'm excited to be here, as you can tell. I want to say thank you to our Honorable Mayor, Mr. George McGill. He always answers the call and is always supportive for us in the community, and just in his brief time, we've been tried by fire through a 500-year flood and COVID-19 and social unrest and the times we're in. But in that wake, we have so many wonderful things and so many awesome things that we see as a result of these crises that we go through. I want to say thank you to Paul Chapman for his vision years ago, and I want to say thank you for his heart and reaching deep beyond and peeling the layers back and being able to forge the connections with our own governor to be able to present that vision and turn that vision into action. And I want to thank Paul for helping us with Karin. And Karin has been such a strong community member here working in our community for many years, and she made a transition to Restore Hope. And with her energy and her love and her big heart, she has almost set the bar too hard for so many others to be able to follow, but we know they will. We know they'll step into her shoes, and we just appreciate her so much. I want to say on behalf of the United Way Board of Directors, I want to express how thankful we are for our great community, the work that has been done by so many thus far, and the future of this collective impact program. In 1928, a group of community leaders came together in Fort Smith to pool their volunteer efforts and resources, forming what was known then in 1928 as the Community Chest. The Community Chest grew through the years, becoming the United Fund, and then as we know it today, the United Way of Fort Smith area, covering 4 counties in Arkansas, Sebastian, Crawford, Franklin, Logan, and 2 counties in Oklahoma, LaFleur, and Sequoia. The mission was and is to this day to unite people and resources, making a lasting change in our community. Over the course of 92 years, United Way has been a volunteer-driven organization in every aspect and area of focus. The United Way serves the community in the areas of health, education, financial stability, and crisis. And in fact, because of the generous community that we have, the United Way of Fort Smith area has been able to pour over $80 million back into our community in 92 years. Many agencies and programs exist today and are thriving as a direct result of the many leaders that have walked before us for 92 years, looking for gaps in services, recognizing areas of need, and they had their desire connected to their action to make change. One of the most important moments in the history of United Way was the establishment of the Endowment Fund. Thanks to the vision and generosity of one of our community leaders, Raleigh Borum, an endowment fund was established to cover the overhead and the administrative expense of United Way, allowing 100% of every dollar raised to go directly to programming. This marks the 10th year in a row that United Way has been able to give back 100% of every dollar raised directly to a program. Today marks another milestone. As you've already witnessed from our mayor and Paul Chapman and Karin Phillips, over the past 2 years, our community has united around a common cause and made a deep impact in the lives of so many. All of this has been accomplished with no additional resources, just simply through finding a way, through hard work, through sweat equity, and persistence, and the resources that were already available among the many agencies. Our agencies and community reach deep into their pockets to find extra to make this happen. I'm thankful today to be able to announce that with the help of Restore Hope, our United Way board, and specifically, I want to say a special thanks to just a few individuals on the United Way side that helped make this happen. Our board chairman, Rob Ratley. I want to thank Dr. Ken Warden from the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith, our attorney, Dalton Person, and our treasurer from Landmark Accounting, Katie Lejeong, and our own finance director, Miss Angie Ruth. Because of these individuals, with the help of those that I mentioned, we were able to secure a grant for $1.67 million for the 100 Family Program. I would like to publicly thank, on behalf of our board and Restore Hope and all of our case managers and community workers, I would like to say thank you to our governor, Asa Hutchinson. I'd like to say thank you to our Arkansas Department of Workforce Services Director, Dr. Sharice Childers, and the Assistant Director, Phil Harris, for their vision and passion to help us secure the much-needed funds to organizations providing the case management. These necessary, and I want to highlight needed, these necessary and needed funds will allow the community to increase positive incomes over 3 times of what we've been able to do so far. These funds will continue to help move families from crisis to care. At this time, I want to ask our new area coordinators, because we're expanding into 4 counties, and I'd like you guys to come up and do social distancing, but I want our Facebook Live folks to be able to see your beautiful faces and that awe-inspiring attitude that we talked about earlier. But I'd like to invite to the stage from White County, our new our county coordinator, Miss Dana Baker. I'd like to ask from Pulaski County, Ms. Shauna Brooks, our area coordinator for Pulaski. I'd like to invite up to the stage our very own treasurer here in the community from Crawford County, Ms. Charlotte Douglas. And yes, she has her mask on, but she is our former state representative, so I know you recognize that name. And then I'd like to invite to the stage our county coordinator for Sebastian County, Ms. Heather Edwards. Guys, this team has been assembled to work in the counties and work with case managers and to get down in the trenches. And with the guidance of Paul and Karin, I know this is going to be an all-star cast. And I'd like just to have another round of applause for our county coordinators. And you'll be happy to know no speeches today. So you guys can go ahead and sit back down if you'd like. We may invite you back up if we have questions, but I think we're good there. A couple other points of interest. I think one of the things with Paul's vision with the governor when they first set along this path in 2015 was to find ways of streamlining data, to find new ways to have case management and technology, to be able to follow a person's path from crisis to care, and from care to education, and from education to trade. And I think in doing that, we have to have some great tools available to us. And in those tools, Paul and his team has worked on developing technology that Karin and her team have already been able to use. And I think one of the beautiful parts of this grant is going to be able to expand and expound upon the technology we have to give the tools to our individual clients through case management, so we'll be able to look for gaps in services, look for those needs and resources that are available, and completely follow somebody through the path. It reminds me of the parable of the lost sheep. When we have somebody that's going through, we're able to see, okay, what is their need? And one of the things Dr. Warden from UAFS brought out to me in the early going is it's hard for somebody to move forward to career or education if their basic needs aren't even met. And so that's one of the things we strive to do. We have another great announcement today, and I'll let Paul talk a little bit more about this before we close today, but Careerconnect. So with the help of the Arkansas Department of Workforce Services, we're going to be able to bring in resources for each of our counties of up to 100 individuals with $10,000 per individual per county to be able to move them into that career. It's going to impact our workforce, our companies that will hire our clients from 100 families and give them necessary resources and tools. It will provide transportation and many other things. And the last thing I just want to leave you with this. My grandfather wrote years ago inside the front cover of his Bible the letters O-A-R. It really has stuck with me through the years. And what does that mean? He spelled it out. Opportunity plus ability equals responsibility. Is that beautiful? We have an opportunity here today as a community. We have ability, as we've already seen. And guess what that gives us? The responsibility. And I'm just so proud to have met Paul and seen his vision and been able to hitch onto his star and be able to be the vehicle from which we're able to move so much money into this community and hopefully so much more in the future. So, Paul, with that, I'll turn it back over to you, and you may want to ask for some questions or have some final remarks. Thank you.
So before we open up for questions, let me remove this. Before we open up for questions, I wanted to give kind of an overview of what the journey looks like and the tools that we've laid in this crisis to career pathway as we think about it. And so we have this software program called Hope Arc that the community can use. And whenever a client is onboarded or met, there's an intake assessment that's done. That assessment looks at 13 different areas like housing, transportation, employment, recovery, and gives a scale of, are you thriving in this area or are you in crisis in this area? And then that assessment is done every month so you can see the progression or regression for an individual client or for your organization's client list, or in this case, what Karin went over was the population, what's happening in this area for the total program. And that data does not exist anywhere that I know of, and it has been a real tool for us to use. So we are now making investments to be able to provide even more data, and the way that we get that data now is pretty laborious, not so at the end of the summer. And our goal then is to provide you all, the organizations in the Alliance, with the ability to actually access that data and query it real time. So that's our ultimate goal. We're working on that now. We've got a firm working on it, and so we'll be bringing that tool. So that's a really important part, and it's also evidence-based. What do you need help with? And let's address those issues. And what we found in analyzing the data where our clients were in crisis on average in 3 areas. which is why that the individual approach that we all have taken in the past usually doesn't result necessarily in good outcomes for the client. It will result in good inputs. For us, I delivered this service. It seemed to have that measurable result. But if the client didn't have a car and didn't have a job and only had 1 month clean time and was at risk for relapse, and you didn't have tools to address those things, then ultimately, no matter how good your educational program was or how good your work program was, there were other issues that the client needed help with. And that's what we've coordinated here. So one is we're going to enhance the system that allows us to communicate and track and help, identify the help that's needed to get to the client. Number two is we have really enhanced our court resolution services. I tell you, it's been a wonderful month for the court resolution team. What we found in this process of working together was that many of our clients, in fact, if we met you in a district court, you had a misdemeanor crime, or you were a reentry client from prison, 70% of the time you had an issue that was suspending your driver's license. It could be a seatbelt ticket that you got 2 years ago and never showed up and never paid. So it's a $175 ticket, yet you have a warrant out for your arrest. And 25% of our child welfare clients had suspended driver's license. Well, we've dedicated resource directly to our court resolution team so that every new client onboarded into the system, no matter where they come from an alliance member, court resolution team immediately, in a partnership with driver control, scans the national database to find out if there are any issues for the client. And then they'll prepare that report and send it back to the case manager that has direct client relationship. And then when ready, when the client is stabilized and ready to address these issues, they've got expertise to contact these courts and start negotiating how are we going to resolve these issues. And many, many times in the past months, we've gotten people their driver's license back. The case managers have had people crying because every time they got in the car, it wasn't that they weren't driving. They were driving. They had to get to work and had to get to the grocery store to buy groceries for the kids. They were driving, and it was illegal when they were driving. And so the stress on many Arkansans as they are trying to navigate in their mind, how am I going to get to Walmart to buy groceries and back, is toxic. And we now have the tool to resolve that, and we're offering it to the communities that have these alliances. And then thirdly, we are so happy to be able to bring this Careerconnect piece. And so a little details on that, and then we'll open up for questions. Careerconnect is going to provide some real incentives to employers who are interested maybe in hiring our clients. And our clients may not have job skills, and they may still have outstanding court or criminal supervision, they're on parole or probation, which causes them to have meetings in the middle of the workday, which is an irritant to most employers. And so we're able to bring a subsidized employment program that when clients are able to gain stability and pass through a gate, right, then we can get them into a training program like at the University of Arkansas at Fort Smith. We can get them into a training program for welding. They can get their welding certificate. And then with this Careerconnect piece, we can reimburse a local employer for the first 3 months of hiring our client, so that we realize that a lot of that 3 months is on-the-job training, and we can reimburse and incent the employers to be able to partner in this alliance. So we couldn't be more excited now as I think about this as truly the pathway. We are laying in all of these opportunities to create so that when a case manager meets somebody at their lowest point, they can say, if you'll make the right choices, I'm with you. There is a way out. Many have gone before, and we've got all these resources, right? Just do the next right thing. And we, the community, are for you, and we're with you. And the only thing that stands in between you and success are your choices now, not all the barriers and the confusion that existed in the past. So thanks for being here today. Any questions? Facebook, any questions? Any questions from the folks here or comments? Is anyone monitoring Facebook? If you're on Facebook and you're asking questions, no one's looking at you right now. We're rectifying that problem. The 4 counties, I think, Eddie Lee, you talked about, Sebastian, Crawford. And then what I'm so grateful for is the Board of United Way, Fort Smith area, has also agreed to take this program and sponsor it into Pulaski and White counties in a pilot to see if we can get alliances going there. So those are the 4 counties in this next year that we'll launch in.